Hi guys, in today's lesson we are going to focus on the division of integers. But before going to divide integers, there are certain rules that we must keep in mind. The first one is that whenever we are dividing integers with the same sign, then their quotient will be a positive integer. Whenever we are dividing integers with different sign, then their quotient will be a negative integer. Now we will go over some examples that will show that how to divide integers. The first example is that whenever we are dividing a positive integer by a positive integer, we will get a positive quotient. For example, positive 8 divided by positive 2. Simply to divide positive 8 by positive 2, we will take the absolute values of the two integers and we will divide the absolute value of positive 8 by the absolute value of positive 2. Take the absolute value of positive 8 divided by the absolute value of positive 2. But the absolute value of positive 8 is 8 and divide by the absolute value of positive 2 is 2. 8 divided by 2 equals to 4. Now as the two integers have a positive sign, so we will put positive sign before the quotient. So positive 8 divided by positive 2 equals to positive 4. So positive 8 divided by positive 2 equals to positive 4. Now we are going to divide a negative integer by a negative integer. So whenever we are dividing a negative integer by a negative integer, the quotient will be a positive integer. For example, negative 6 divided by negative 2. So simply to divide negative 6 by negative 2, take the absolute values of the two integers and divide the absolute value of negative 6 by the absolute value of negative 2. Take the absolute value of negative 6. So the absolute value of negative 6 divided by the absolute value of negative 2, which equals to the absolute value of negative 6 is 6 divided by, and the absolute value of negative 2 as 2. 6 divided by 2 equals to 3. Here the two integers have the same negative sign. We will put a positive sign before the quotient. Quotient will be positive 3. Negative 6 divided by negative 2 equals to positive 3. Now we are going to divide a negative integer by a positive integer. Whenever we are dividing a negative integer by a positive integer, the quotient will be a negative integer. For example, negative 12 divided by positive 6. To divide negative 12 by positive 6, first we will take the absolute values of the two integers. Or to divide negative 12 by positive 6, we will divide the absolute value of negative 12 by the absolute value of positive 6. The absolute value of negative 12 divided by the absolute value of positive 6. The absolute value of negative 12 equals to 12 and the absolute value of positive 6 equals to 6. 12 divided by 6 equals to 2. Now as the two integers have different sign, so our quotient will be a negative integer. So negative 12 divided by positive 6 equals to negative 2. Now we are going to divide a positive integer by a negative integer. Whenever we are dividing a positive integer by a negative integer, the quotient will be a negative integer. For example, positive 15 divided by negative 3. To divide positive 15 by negative 3, we will divide the absolute value of positive 15 by the absolute value of negative 3. So, the absolute value of positive 15 divided by the absolute value of negative 3. The absolute value of positive 15 is 15 divided by the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. 15 divided by 3 equals to 5. Now as the two integers have different sign, so we will put a negative sign before the quotient. So our quotient will be negative 5. 15 positive 15 divided by negative 3 equals to negative 5. We are going to discuss that whenever an integer except 0 is divided by itself, the quotient will always be 1. For example, negative 2 divided by negative 2. Our quotient will be positive 1, right? In the same way, I am gonna divide positive 5 by positive 5. The quotient will be positive 1. Any number that you want to divide by itself, the quotient will always be 1. Now we are going to discuss that whenever we are dividing 0 by any integer except 0, the result will always be 0. For example, 0 divided by 5 equals to 0. 0 divided by 10 equals to 0. So whenever we are dividing 0 by any integer, the quotient will always be 0. And whenever you are dividing an integer by itself, the quotient will always be positive 1. So dear viewer, if you have enjoyed the video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos related to math. Thank you for watching.